Welcome everyone. Look, it's great to hear from the mobile operators, the WISPs and the satellite providers. So now I'm going to talk about taking fibre further and a bit about copper broadband. And I think one thing we should all acknowledge is no one technology solution can do everything in rural. As a lot of people have been saying today, rural New Zealand is very challenging, and I think the key is picking the right recipe out of all of these components to bring New Zealand better broadband everywhere. I wanted to start with a bit of reflection on RBI1. So the numbers. So the priority users for our component of RBI1 was taking fibre to schools, hospitals. We also connected 110,000 homes and businesses in rural New Zealand, and we did that by rolling out over 1,000 kilometres of fibre and upgrading 1,200 DSL cabinets, and also connecting rolling fibre to 157 cell phone towers. Now, one of the things I just want to highlight is as soon as those cabinets were upgraded, 110,000 homes and businesses immediately got better ADSL broadband and moving from ADSL to ADSL 2+ technology. However, all of those cabinets also support VDSL. Now, I know my colleague here was saying VDSL is urban technology. Well, I think many people in rural will disagree that there's great VDSL capability out there in rural. 80% of those 110,000 connections can get VDSL, but at the moment only 20% of them have taken up VDSL. So one of the things of my views is building a great network is not the only challenge. It's also improving awareness of what is available and encouraging consumers to take up better because it is available, and all people need to do is to ask for it. Chorus, we are not a retail service provider. We are wholesale only. There are over 50 retail service providers that sell our capability. And so our biggest call would be, please ask for better because it is already available to many people. As an example, we took fibre to the school in Pukeatua, excuse me if my pronunciation's not great, in southern Waikato. And so we rolled a brand new fibre out to that school. And on the way to that fibre, we upgraded a broadband cabinet. And just a few examples, many people in this area are now getting fantastic speeds, 86 megabits a second on VDSL. Now, the thing to remember about VDSL and copper broadband is it's dedicated to you. This provides a dedicated copper pair from that cabinet to your house. You don't need to share any of that with anyone else. It's all yours, and with fibre backhaul and Chorus running a congestion-free backhaul, that speed is yours 24/7, and that's what we think better broadband's all about. So if you're looking around, the further you are away from a Chorus cabinet, the lower your speed is. That is the law of physics. That is how things work. It'd be great if everyone could get fibre to the home, because that is truly the best, but the reality of rural is distances along. So as I click around here, you're seeing people up to 1.5 kilometres, still getting 27 megabits on VDSL. In this particular area, there's still a few people who are on ADSL, getting 20 megabits a second on ADSL, but they could, if they ask for it, get VDSL and get much better speeds. Down here, over 3 kilometres away from the cabinet, too far for VDSL, 7 megabits a second. This is the challenge of rural. Fixed network is great at serving people where there is a modicum of population density, but the reality is some people in rural live in really remote places, and this is where the other technologies that we've heard about today fit in. Since RBI1's completed, we haven't stood still. We finished in June 2016, and we've been doing a lot more work to improve broadband in rural. So we've rolled out another 123 cabinets, making better broadband available to an additional 10,000 people in rural New Zealand. And one example is in the small rural community of Kumaroa in Tararua District. So that cabinet was upgraded on Thursday last week. Now, that's why I picked it, because it's the latest one to be upgraded. And in fact, we've also got a cabinet, I think you mentioned Te Akau in Waikato. So that cabinet's being upgraded on Thursday this week to Te Akau. And the great thing about that Te Akau cabinet's actually down in the valley where people live. So that means people in that Te Akau valley will be able to get VDSL speeds because these assets are located right where the people live. So in this type of neighbourhood, at the moment, well, last week, people in Kumaroa connected to the Chorus network were only able to get not a very good 2 megabits a second. That was with legacy Conklin DSLAMs and with copper backhaul. Now, it was actually the copper backhaul from that cabinet to the nearest town which was causing that community reliability problems. However, now that that cabinet's been upgraded with fibre, most of their broadband connection is now fibre. So I know as a community we talk about copper broadband, but the reality is most of that community's broadband now is fibre because most of the distance of their broadband connection is now covered by fibre, which is congestion-free and reliable. There's plenty of people in this township who aren't currently connected to the Chorus network, and we welcome them to come. All they need to do is to ask for better from their retail service provider. We've also spent a lot of resource on improving using analytics, software and tools, making a broadband, making people more aware and improving the capability. So last year we launched a broadband checker so that people could find out what their connection speed was. So that when they do a speed test, they can compare a speed test with what their actual connection speed is and understand what their performance is like. Just recently, we've invested in better upgrade prediction technology, which means we now can accurately predict the speed that you will get if you upgrade to better broadband on our network. Another key factor is we all know that the broadband network in New Zealand is the busiest at 9 o'clock at night. This is when Kiwis choose to use their broadband the most, and so it means that we must capacity plan the broadband network to support peak time. It's no good having a fantastic connection speed when you're not using it and then having a rubbish connection speed when you want to use it. So at Chorus we run a congestion-free network policy, and that means we ensure that we always have more capacity in our network at peak. Now this has been ratified by the Commerce Commission for copper services, so everyone can be 100% assured that if you take broadband via a retail service provider that uses Chorus fixed network, you will be able to get your connection speed at 9 o'clock at night when you want to use it the most. Another feature we've included recently is called diagnosis-driven DLM. So we've been running DLM, dynamic line management, on VDSL for quite a few years, but we've introduced a new version called diagnosis-driven and extended that from VDSL and also extended it across ADSL. Now, one of the interesting features of that particular technology is it's delivered a 2 megabit improvement pretty much to everyone's connection, independent of your distance. And in fact, people on the longest copper loops who were getting the lowest speeds have therefore had the biggest improvement. So if you were getting 5 megabits on a Chorus ADSL connection last month, with dd-DLM that we introduced at the end of May, you'll now be bumped up to 7 meg. Now, 2 megabits for someone like me living in urban New Zealand with gigabit fibre may not sound like a lot, but we appreciate that for many New Zealanders, getting high speed is a challenge. So in this particular case, getting another couple of meg to give you a guaranteed 7 meg throughput any time of day is a good thing. Some ideas we're looking at for the future. One of the things we've got in development is vectoring technology. Now, vectoring is a software enhancement to VDSL. It works in the same way that noise cancellation headphones work. It detects interference and crosstalk on the copper line and then injects white noise into that line to cancel the noise out. Now, if you can see from the graph here, without vectoring technology, you get a wide range of VDSL lines depending on the individual interference attributes of that line. With vectoring technology, all lines are brought up to a much more consistent level, which means you get a much more consistent speed 24/7, 365 days a year. It also means we can predict much more accurately the exact speed you're going to get, and then consumers have a much higher level of confidence that what they're buying is indeed what they've been sold. Along with vectoring, there's a couple of other software features we're looking at. G.IMP, impulse noise protection, and upstream power backoff. These are all enhanced VDSL features that lift the performance of VDSL and extend the reach. So with all of these features, we think we can deliver 25 megabits to 2.4 kilometers and 10 megabits out to over 3.5 kilometers on copper. And despite what some people say about the quality of copper, the irony is in rural has some of the best quality copper in the country. Our forefathers were wise enough to deploy very thick gauged copper in rural. So typically we have 0.63 millimeter gauge copper in rural, and rural hasn't had an enormous population increase like we have had in parts of Auckland. So the copper in rural is actually some of the most pristine, thick gauge, best copper we have in the country. Another couple of physical attributes we're looking at is to lower the cost of deploying better broadband in rural. So, we're all about deploying fibre deeper, and on the left-hand side there, what we're showing there is a new cut-in innovation we've got, because we have a lot of existing fibre in rural and we want to make it easier and more cost-effective to provide access to that existing fibre, particularly when you've got taut, sheath, direct buried fibre cables. It can be expensive to break into them. So we've innovated with our suppliers to develop a much more cost-effective cut-in capability that I'm showing on the left here, which means that we can leverage existing fibre that we've rolled out to provide more backhaul and provide more broadband capability. On the right-hand side is a photograph of a sealed DSLAM unit. So in the mobile industry, the trend is towards small cell sites. And in the copper broadband industry, the same trend. Rather than deploying huge cabinets or huge towers, everyone's looking at deploying much smaller, environmentally sealed units. So that DSLAM unit on the right-hand side there, it's about this big, supports 16 or 48 customers, onboard vectoring and onboard baseband IP voice, and very cheap to deploy. You don't need to be inside a cabinet, and fibre backhauled and deployed very close to the consumer, which means we can do 50 to 100 meg quite simply. And the last couple of thoughts I've got is, our view is it's all about taking fibre closer. I think quite a few of my previous presenters have made the same commentary that it's not just broadband, but mobile is made a lot better the further you can take fibre out. So that's what our basic pitch is. We need to keep taking fibre further out, because that is the foundation of better broadband. If all around the world fixed network operators are on the journey from the old ADSL technology, the bottom, up to the ideal outcome, which is fibre to the home. Now, every operator in the world is choosing a different pathway to that journey, but the commonality is you have to take fibre closer to people in order to improve resiliency and improve the speeds. In New Zealand, we're not doing the G.fast step there. Many operators around the world are looking to do fibre to the curb, to get fibre within 100 metres of the home, and are looking at using G.fast technology to deliver a gigabit over copper. We've looked at that seriously and decided in New Zealand that that's not a step we're going to take. And if we think about the same for mobile networks, I believe the same is true. Where we are heading is to as mentioned a few times before, a 5G future. 5G should be fantastic, enabling gigabit speeds or more, but you've got to get the cell site really, really, really close to the consumer to get those types of speeds. So the answer always is to get fibre closer, and then whether it's copper, wireless, cellular, last mile, doesn't really matter. We need to use all of those in the best place.